a special guest, best-selling author Otho Eskin, whose new book, second book, featuring Marko Zorn, Headshot, drops today physically. I say physically because it's been out digitally for a while, but now the hardcover is available. Otho, welcome to BookTrib.
Well, thank you. Glad to see you again.
It's wonderful. We did this about a year ago. Now we're
about
doing
a year ago, right?
You know, it's a great start out. A reviewer for the USA Today Network, in a review that will run this Sunday, said the following about Headshot: a sprawling, ambitious, and better realized than Eskin's first effort. This is a thinking man's thriller that would make David Baldacci or Brad Meltzer proud. And Zorn, Marko Zorn, is one of the most unique and colorful voices in thriller fiction today. Not a bad review for the last paragraph.
Absolutely delighted to hear it.
Well, I happen to know the reviewer who wrote that, and he's a big fan of yours. So let's jump right in. We only have 30 minutes, so I don't want to waste any time.
Okay.
Here's a question I couldn't have possibly asked you for the first book, that being, how did writing the second book, the process of writing the second book, how was it different than the process of writing the first book?
Well, I like to think I learned something from the writing the first book. I had the experience, and I knew where some of the problem areas might be that I was going to face, but mainly I got to know my main character, Marko Zorn. In the first book, The Reflecting Pool, I was sort of learning to live with him, learning what he was like, learning what his characters was. And by the time I do the second book, by Headshot, I think I knew Marko Zorn pretty well. I knew what he does, what he doesn't do, and how he acts and how he deals with problems. So that changed the way I wrote about him.
In other words, Marko Zorn is an evolving character. He's not a static character. And as you continue the series, he's going to continue to grow. He's going to continue to evolve. We're going to learn things about him that even you don't know yet. Isn't that right?
That's right, exactly. Yes, in this book, more is revealed about Marko Zorn, about his past and about his character. And I hope in future novels, there will be more and more revealed to explore this very complicated guy.
Tell me something, Otho, that you learned from writing The Reflecting Pool that you wish you had known from the start. What was the number one lesson you learned, and how did you transfer that lesson when you started writing Headshot?
Well, apart from not trusting Microsoft spell check, I felt more confident. I felt that I could trust my readers a little more. There are a lot of things that are not said, not spelled out. And when I wrote The Reflecting Pool, I was uncomfortable. I didn't want to leave my readers in the dark. But I've discovered the readers are pretty smart, and they know what they're doing. They probably know more than I do. And so I've left a lot of things unsaid to create a bit of a mystery. And so I think I feel more confident in doing that.
One of the things I did yesterday in preparation for our conversation today was I went back and I looked at all the Amazon reviews of The Reflecting Pool. But I was searching for a 1-star review or two, something that, so I could ask you about a criticism. And I didn't find, there was one 1-star review that wasn't even talking about the book. I mean, I didn't even understand it. I think they didn't like the size of the print or something. So what I did find was a very much of a embracing of Marko Zorn, that he popped with people. People got who he was, and they liked him. When you look at all the things people have told you about Marko Zorn, what is the thing that stands out the most, and what are you most gratified by that you've read, heard, or gotten from feedback from a critic about Marko?
Well, to begin with, when people do comment on the book, either The Reflecting Pool or now Headshot. The main thing they talk about is Marko Zorn. That's the figure, that not the plot. Oh, there he is, right in front of you, way ahead of me. They're intrigued. This was the most difficult thing for me in writing the book, because Marko Zorn is not your usual detective in any sense. For one thing, he doesn't carry a gun, and this isn't a political statement or eccentricity. He has reasons for being very wary of carrying a gun, because he knows he's capable of extreme violence. But beyond that, he has very expensive tastes that cost a lot more than he can afford on a cop's salary. Many cops do that. Many cops work overtime. They work in security and things of that sort. But in the case of Marko Zorn, that's not enough. He does jobs that are, let us say, marginally illegal, not actually illegal. He can't be charged with a crime, but he's very close to the edge. And he worked for people, some of the people who are very much over the edge on the criminal side. So he's very comfortable in working both sides of the line. He does not believe in rules. Oh, he does believe. I misstated. He believes in his own rules. He writes his own rules as he goes along, but he does not observe other people's rules. Least of all, the department of the police department's rules. He has his own compass. He does not do things that are immoral or actually illegal, but he's very close to it. And I think people are intrigued by that. But that, of course, is one of the big challenges in writing, because I had to make him sympathetic at the same time as on the edge, and also wanted people to be worried that he's going to step over the line once too often and get caught. So far, he hasn't been, but you never know.
Speaking of Marko Zorn, here is the opening paragraph of Headshot. The wood panel explodes above my head, and I drop to the ground and lie pressed against the wet stone steps, sucking in oxygen, my heart pounding, my arteries pumped with adrenaline. I want to scramble to my feet and make a run for it, but I force myself to stay motionless. Here, I'm hidden by the yew trees and shrubs in my front yard, standing, I'm an easy target. The thing I love about that, then I want to go on to the question. This isn't even the question. I love how you show us, not tell us, you show us that he's in his front yard. Having this happen at his house creates an entirely different level of suspense and foreboding than if it was just in a random Washington, D.C. setting. So I have a two-part question for you. Let's start with why writing in the present tense, a staple of classic noir, which we'll come to in the second part of my question. But why present tense, Otho?
I felt that it was more immediate, that the reader would be brought more into the scene and feel something of the threat, the danger, the anxiety that the main character is feeling. If you put it in the past tense, you know he's going to survive. So I thought it just made it more immediate.
I'd like to call the Zorn series Reflecting Pool and Headshot. I'd like to call, I didn't call it this in the review, but I could have, and that's Washington Noir. And there are tremendous echoes in my mind of Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, both writers who set were LA Noir. They invented LA Noir. Mm-hmm. Was this organic? Was it from your reading of the masters of noir crime fiction, or was it an effect you were going for?
Well, I'm flattered that you compare me to those writers, brilliant writers whom I admire enormously. But I don't think of myself as writing a Washington noir. It's more Washington beige. Not in the sense that those writers did the mean streets. There are main streets in Washington, and I look at some of those in the first book. the reflecting pool. But a lot of this takes place in very civilized surroundings, the State Department and embassies and fancy receptions. No noir there, no directly. So I feel that it's more less the mean streets of Los Angeles than it is the kind of streets of Washington, which are not all that dangerous normally, unless you're in the wrong part of town, of course.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's almost like the noir or the darkness lurks in the hearts of the characters.
That's right.
Because
Yes.
there's so much ambiguity. There's so many characters who are duplicitous. You don't know which side they're coming through. Speaking of which, compared to the reflecting pool, having read them both, you seem more comfortable as a writer. You're the scene, and I'll specifically reference the action scenes in Headshot. They're better. They're so well staged. They're so beautifully choreographed. And I enjoyed the action scenes. There weren't as many of them in Reflecting Pool, and they weren't as elaborate. I enjoyed them, but there is a mastery and a confidence that I'm sensing in your writing in Headshot compared to Reflecting Pool. Is that something that you were you having more fun? Was it coming easier for you with Headshot?
That's a very good question. I wish I had a smart answer to give you. Of course, some of it comes just from experience, having gone through these action scenes, which are difficult to write, as I'm sure you know. I found myself, to use your term, more comfortable writing them in Headshot. And so it comes from experience. It comes from the confidence that I built up in the Reflecting Pool. And so I felt that I could try some new things, some experimental things, and get away with it. And I felt more confident in doing that.
You know, Mickey Spillane, talking about Noir, the creator of the Mike Hammer series,
Yes.
told the story because he passed away. But he told the story once about one of the Mickey Spillane books. I forgot the name of it. But the ending is so violent. Mike Hammer has a machine gun, and the ending is so violent, he kills so many people, he has to reload twice. He goes through 3 magazines, and he gets a note back from his editor. Ending much too violent. Have him reload only once. And I was wondering, did you have the same, and this gets to the writing process, because a lot of BookTrib fans are writers, or people who are very interested in the writing process. Did you have the same group of editors or the same editor for both books, or was there a changeover?
No, it's all the same people involved from beginning to end, principally my literary agent who advised me throughout. I don't think she ever said less violent, but I had the same team essentially throughout. And it wasn't that I was getting different advice. I just said, I guess I can't grow more comfortable in doing those scenes.
In film and staging and on the stage, which is where your background, where a lot of your creative energy originated. The term blocking gets used a lot. When you choreograph a scene, what we see on screen is a jumble of action. But what we don't see is that there are marks and tapes and tape across the floor and visuals where those actors and stuntmen, they're hitting every single mark because that's where the camera is focused. Now, I noticed in both books, but especially because there is more action in Headshot and it's more elaborate. The staging is so confident, even in the biggest of the action scenes. So well choreographed. Is this something that you got from your background in stage, in blocking scenes for the theater?
To some extent, yes. I have to admit right offhand, the blocking normally is done by the director, not by the writer. The writer's input is not normally welcome at any stage. as you probably have
Uh-huh.
known yourself. What I do when I do these action scenes is I block them in my head. I know exactly where everybody is located, as if I'm looking at a screen, and then write it that way. But that comes just because I need to make it clear to the reader what's going on. When I wrote plays, the blocking was pretty simple.
Yeah.
You know, so somebody enters, somebody pulls a gun, somebody falls over, that kind of thing. No intricate thing, because the director would have just ignored everything I said.
It's such a great point. If you read the original screenplay of Gone with the Wind, you'll come to a 2-line phrase: Atlanta burns.
Yes.
One of the biggest scenes in one of the biggest movies of all time. 2 words. Ben-Hur. The original script of Ben-Hur. 2 words. They raced. And you're right, because the screenwriters in both cases knew that the director and the stunt, the lead stunt people were going to choreograph it their way. The great villains, the saying goes, in fiction, make great heroes. Your website, and I notice on other areas, and how Headshot is being rolled out. The top line reads, "The most elusive assassin in the world versus DC homicide detective Marko Zorn." Talk about that assassin, that villain, and the fun you seem to have had developing him or her. I don't want to give anything away.
Well, writing villains is fun, because writing about bad people is usually more interesting than writing about good people, because most readers, that's the people they live and work with. They have good people. The bad people are the strangers, the oddity. I don't want to say too much about the villain, because I don't want to introduce any spoilers. Because one of the things that I tried to do, and I think successfully, is keep the identity of this assassin secret until the very, very end. And I don't want to ruin it for everybody, so they don't buy the book. So I want to dodge your question. But I had a very clear notion about the nature of the assassin as I wrote through, but I didn't spell it out very much, because anything I said about the assassin would have been a giveaway, or could have been. So I was very discreet.
Marko Zorn is coming back. That's not a spoiler. We know he's coming back in the third.
Yes. No, that's not a spoiler.
Yeah, that's not a spoiler. The villain, we won't say whether the villain is coming back or not, but in most cases, villains are only in one book, whereas heroes are in all of them. The hero, the recurring hero. Do you feel liberated writing a villain, because you don't have to bring them back in the next book? You can do whatever you want with them.
That's right.
Because they're out after the end. Do you have more? So you don't have anything you have to do except develop them within the moment of the story.
Well, yes, Conan Doyle managed to keep Moriarty going for years and years and years. Obviously, until finally, I think he got sick of him. But for years, he kept that whole series going, because that was one of the interesting things. The way I've structured these things, it doesn't quite work out that way. But I've got some villains tucked away in the background who will emerge in later books, I trust. And so, yes, I enjoy doing the villains, but I have to be careful about what I say this time, because it'll be a giveaway.
I won't say any more except to ask the next question. You're also on your website, you pose yourself the question: what part of writing your book did you find the most challenging? Here was your answer: developing a main character who's both engaging and believable. And you have done something, and I have to say, I've racked my brain, because I pretty much read every book like this that's published, every single one, because I review. And I can't think of one that does what you've done. And I wish somebody out there could email me right now and correct me. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a hero who works, usually the nature of a thriller is the hero either works within the system, a la Michael Connelly's brilliant Harry Bosch, or works entirely outside the system, a la Jack Reacher's classic, Lee Child's classic Jack Reacher. But you've got Marko Zorn and both an insider and an outsider. Talk about the decision or the creative license in having Zorn play both sides of the coin, heads and tails.
Well, that was my original concept. I wanted him to be divided. I needed to have him be a cop because that gave me the justification for him to get involved in crimes rather than being a private detective or just a private citizen. So I needed that justification, but I wanted him to be someone who is very unusual because he works both sides, and he now knows the criminal side and works with the criminal side, sometimes works for the criminal side within limits. So I needed to do both of those things in order to justify the plot complications that I wanted to introduce. So that was my concept from day one.
William Faulkner once wrote that the greatest conflict is the human heart at war with itself. Given the duality of the nature of Marko Zorn, the secrets he holds, the dual lives he lives, would you find that to be an accurate depiction of him, the human heart at war with itself? As Faulkner said, is he a conflicted character? Is he a resolute character? Does he have self-doubt? How else would you describe him?
I've never been asked that question, but the answer, I think, is no. I don't think he's at war with himself. He's actually quite comfortable with himself. He likes his life. He likes what he does. I mean, he gets into serious trouble, sometimes deadly trouble, which he doesn't really want to do, but he's not in conflict. He has no internal conflict about what he does. He's comfortable with how he lives and how he operates. So the fact that he works close to the edge of legality doesn't bother him at all. He does not. He has a very strict moral code, and he won't violate that moral code. But it's his own private moral code, not everybody else's. So but it doesn't create any internal conflict for him.
We're into the home stretch of our conversation here on BookTrib Live today, and I'd like to do a lightning round, real fast questions, fast answers, but I reserve the right to follow up. Lightning round. What is your favorite book of all time?
I've thought about that question, and I can't answer it. There's so many books. For most of my adult life, I read nonfiction, books on language, books of philosophy, a lot of history, but of course, many classic works of fiction. But there are so many brilliant writers that it seems dishonest and disreputable to pick one out of another. So I'm
going to tweak that. I'm going to tweak that and say, besides Headshot and The Reflecting Pool, what is your favorite thriller of all time?
Well, again, that's difficult. There's so many, and I include Jon Land in my long list of favorites.
You have
questionable taste. The Needle, which is one of the earliest books I read in this genre, and I found I really liked it very much, and still like it. It holds up extremely well, and that's a really challenging book to write because the main character is a Nazi spy during World War II, not your typical hero, and yet he manages to make the reader care.
You write these are technically political thrillers set in Washington. What is the greatest political thriller of all time, book or movie?
Well, that's a hard one, but I think Graham Greene's The Third Man. I know that's not part of the normal listing, but I think it's a terrific book and still holds up marvelously.
Great answer. Best movie adaptation of someone else's book?
Well, Well, I was going to say The Third Man because of Orson Welles and his improv performance. But that's a great. I mean, I served in East Berlin many years after The Third Man takes place. But the scenes of Vienna right after the World War II are just so effective as a setting, apart from the plot, that I've always felt that the Graham Greene and whoever did I've forgotten who the director is now, caught that world so well.
That's a brilliant answer to both questions. Speaking of TV or movie adaptations, what actor? I mean, Michael Connelly chose Titus Detweiler to play Harry Bosch. What actor would you choose to play Marko Zorn?
Well, there's so many, but I think George Clooney, I think, would be a marvelous.
Wow. I agree.
Well, I hope he does too.
You know what? He could use a role like this. I can't think the last time I saw George Clooney in a movie or at a period, but also a movie that I liked. And here's one I like to ask writers, just because we hold up mirrors to the world. And sometimes some thriller writers choose to leave some of what's the mirror shows us out and some put it all in. Are you planning in the next book, and this will be a segue to our last topic, how are you going to use COVID, the pandemic in future books?
Well, a short answer is I'm not. The reason is it's such a tragedy to so many people around the world that I would feel very uncomfortable appearing to being exploiting what is an awful experience, which is still going on. So I hope that we'll see the last of it in the next coming months, but who knows? But I don't want to feel that I'm taking advantage of an experience which is so hard and tragic on so many people. So I think I would duck that issue.
You know, speaking of ducking issues or other issues, writers imagine, most of us like me have no experience in the real world the way you've had as a diplomat, as international lawyer, all the things you've done. So all I do is imagine the way things might be. And then there are professionals in Washington who imagine what will be based on what is. Right now, we're in a tumultuous time in American history, arguably the most tumultuous conflicted time since the Civil War.
Yes.
There are some looking forward, it could be very scary. As a writer and as a former diplomat and Washington insider, peer into your crystal ball and tell me how all this ends. Tell me how it ends.
Yes. Well, you understand, and I'm sure you understand better than I do, what we write are entertainments. They're for people to enjoy. I'm not writing deep philosophical thoughts about the state of American polity. So I don't want to people read my books and come away depressed and discouraged. I want them to feel comfortable and happy and, oh, it turned out okay, didn't it? So I would be very, very cautious in trying to deal face to face with the divisions which you describe. I can't ignore them, and I may sometime incorporate them. And a bit in the reflecting pool, I touched on it because one of the major events was the establishment of a white nationalist militia, and I wanted to get address that tangentially, but I didn't try to deal with it in a very serious manner.
In our final 30 seconds, where is Marko Zorn going next? Tell us about the third book in the series.
Okay, well, I've already finished the third book. Marko Zorn is now facing his most daunting adversary, which is Big Pharma. And so he's got his hands full when dealing with a pharmaceutical company that is selling narcotics legally and illegally.
We have a title yet?
And he has to put a stop to that.
Do we have a title?
Well, we're playing with fire, something like that.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first on BookTrib, as you hear many things first on BookTrib about the book industry and what's coming out. This is Jon Land. Thank you for being here. Otho, it was wonderful to be speaking to you. Again, Jon Land for BookTrib. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, John.